My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Have you been told that you are too sensitive by family and friends? Do you actually feel the feelings of others, both positive and negative, as though they were your feelings? Do you experience the physical and emotional pain of others? Empathy is a quality that most humans share, but being an empath goes much deeper. It can entail the full gamut of experiencing what others experience without filters. It can make it difficult to separate your personal feelings from what you're picking up from the outside world. My guest this evening on Destination Unlimited, Dr. Judith Orloff, is an intuitive, an empath, and an expert on helping others understand and work with these gifts. Dr. Orloff is a leading voice in the fields of medicine, psychiatry, and intuitive development. An assistant clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA, her best-selling books include Emotional Freedom, Positive Energy, Dr. Judith Orloff's Guide to Intuitive Healing, and Second Sight. Her website is drjudithorloff.com, and she joins us tonight to discuss her latest book, The Empath's Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. It's my great pleasure to welcome to Destination Unlimited an amazingly gifted woman and someone who I have the privilege of calling a personal friend, Dr. Judith Orloff. Good evening, Judith. Welcome.
Hi, Vic. I'm happy to be on your show.
Oh, so wonderful to have you with us tonight, Judith. Just a little background for our listeners. Judith and my wife, Lori Sue, have been friends for more than 22 years, and I had the pleasure of meeting Judith when Lori Sue and I began our relationship about 19 years ago. Now, Judith played a very important role at both our wedding and on our wedding night. Now, let me explain. Judith was co-maid of honor with Ariel Ford at our wedding ceremony in Las Vegas. And later that night, I started experiencing some chest pain, and Judith was with us in the hotel. She climbed into bed next to me, in the bed with me and Lori Sue, placed her hands over my heart, and began healing me. The pain subsided, and when I got back to New York and saw a cardiologist, it turned out that one of my arteries was 99% occluded. The doctor performed an angioplasty and inserted a couple of stents, and I was fine after that, but said I was lucky that I did not have a full-blown heart attack. I said it wasn't luck. It was the skillful and compassionate healing of Dr. Judith Orloff that saved me. So thank you once again, because if you hadn't have done that, we wouldn't be having this interview tonight.
Oh, Vic, I'm so happy that the healing got you to a place where you could fly home and get treatment.
Absolutely.
And I just felt the instinct to crawl into bed with you and Laura Sue and just go at it with you in terms of the healing. It was very organic and motivated by love in my heart.
Absolutely. And again, my gratitude for you now and always.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too, hon. So let's talk a little bit about your path for our listeners and readers who may be meeting you for the first time. What was it like growing up in a family of physicians?
I had two physician parents, and I come from a family of 25 physicians, and I was a little girl who was an empath. And an empath is somebody who can sense intuitively what's going on in others and actually absorb the energy into their own bodies. Empaths are emotional sponges. And so the positive side of that is that it really gave me a deeper connection to the universe and to myself, and certainly now as a psychiatrist, my empathy helps me with my work, my connections, my ability to love, my connection to nature. But as a child, I didn't know what was going on. So I'd walk into crowded places, and I'd walk in feeling fine, and I'd then leave exhausted or sick or depressed or anxious or something. Like I'd picked something up in that crowded place, but I had no idea how to interpret that. And my parents, who were both doctors, my mother especially, said, "Oh dear, you just need to get a thicker skin." Yeah, I mean, you need to toughen up, which is not what you tell an empathic child. And there's a section in the book on raising empathic children and what if you're an empathic parent, because I feel so strongly having gone through that as a child and not being given the support I needed, not because they didn't love me, but because they just didn't know. And so it's so important to encourage these abilities in ourselves and our children.
Absolutely. How old were you when you first realized that you had these abilities?
I think I always had them from the moment I was born, but I think when I realized it was more when I was starting to go out into crowds, because that's when it really, the empathy got really exacerbated, because I get so overwhelmed, or going to parties with my friends. So I would say maybe 9 or 10, but certainly as a teenager. And, as I wrote in my first book, Second Sight, I got heavily involved with drugs as a teenager to try and quiet all this overstimulation that was coming in, just from the ordinary world and also from the intuitive realm. It was just way too much for me, and I was on sensory overload, but I had no guidance. I was all alone. I had no guidance about how to handle this empathy and this intuition that was just flooding me too much, too fast. And, that's one motivation why I wrote this book is, to help people identify if they're empaths. That's a diagnosis. That's a specific diagnosis that needs certain treatments. It doesn't need usually medication. There's so many other things that you can do before medicating anxiety or depression or agoraphobia, which empaths often get misdiagnosed as. And so, I think it's so important to identify if you're an empath early on, and there's certainly quizzes in the book, and it's what if your child is an empath? There's a quiz in the book, to get a grip on it so you know what you are. It's kind of like when somebody finds out they're an alcoholic and they go, oh my God, that's what I am, now I know what to do. The same is true with empathy, being an empath. It's like, I get so many emails and letters from people saying, thank you for helping me realize I was an empath. It changes everything, because it really puts your experiences in a context that's understandable.
Was anyone else? I'm sorry.
And there's so many of us out there, so many empaths out there.
Absolutely. Was anyone else in your family empathic?
Well, my mother was intuitive, and I'm pretty sure she was empathic because she was sick a lot. And she would take on, she was a physician, but she also had every psychosomatic illness and a lot of real illnesses in her body. And so I suspect, that she was taking on a lot because she opened up her heart to her patients. And I saw her when I was a little girl. I'd go on house calls with her, and I'd watch her, and she'd open up her whole body to her patients. So I can only assume she was an empath and taking on all that stuff. But unfortunately, if empaths who were not given adequate techniques to stop absorbing can take on symptoms from other people if they're physical empaths. And I happen to be a physical and emotional empath, but I somatize it. And so I've had to learn how to really breathe it out and to allow the energy, help the energy move through my body so it doesn't get stuck in my body and be translated as exhaustion or some kind of symptom.
Is this gift something that is inherited? You mentioned your mom. I know in my family, my grandfather was, and I am. Is this something that's inherited in families?
Yeah, it seems so. In my family, it was passed down through the women. My father wasn't an empath. He had a whole different constitution. He was not absorptive. He didn't take on energy from other people, but empaths do. And I think it could be even genetic. I think when they actually, get down to, looking at the genetic components, they're going to find something that's passed down. I mean, certainly Elaine Aron has done research on highly sensitive people, and she's found that they're part of 20% of the population. So that's a pretty high percentage.
It'd be interesting that you'd be able to send away a sample of your saliva and have your genome broken down and find out, hey, there's that empath gene.
Empath gene, right.
That'd be pretty cool, actually, when they eventually find the scientific test for that. That would be pretty special.
I like that.
So how did you choose psychiatry as your specialty?
Well, I went into psychiatry on the basis of a dream that I had where a voice came to me to let me know that I was to become a psychiatrist to help legitimize intuition and that realm in medicine. And empathy, by the way, is a form of intuition. And this was at a time when I wasn't in school. I didn't want to go to school, let alone go to medical school, because I had been raised around all those doctors and I was just not attracted to it. But however, I had the dream at that point. It was when I was about 21. And so I re-enrolled in a community college just to see how it would go. I didn't think the dream would come true, but time passed, and 1 year became 2 years, became 14 years of medical training. So it wasn't on what I wanted to do logically. I didn't go into medical school like that. I went into medical school just trusting that I was supposed to do it because of this dream. And then once, of course, you take that step, then the energy was all behind me. And it was like wind behind my back, so that I got through it.
So you're in medical school and you're specializing in psychiatry and you're dealing with a psychiatric professor or multiple psychiatric professors. Did you ever tell them about this?
No, I didn't. I was afraid to. As I finally found a place that I'd fit in, I never was an insider anywhere. I was always an outsider.
Yeah.
In fact, I didn't even feel like I belonged on this planet. I believed that, I belonged somewhere else. I felt like an alien here.
I think most of us who are empaths feel the same way, and we're going to be back with more of Judith Orloff and her new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People, after these words from the OMTimes Radio Network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi, this is Sylvia Henderson, intuitive life coach and energy healer. Are you ready to elevate and rise way above your normal? Be sure to listen to my show, Intuitive Transformations, on OMTimes Radio, Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get the inspiration you need to transform your life.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the Grads of Life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening, Dr. Judith Orloff, author of the new book, The Empath's Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. So, Judith, so many people have been told things like, you're too emotional or you're too sensitive, and they grow up feeling like there's something wrong with them. In your experience, are many of these people empaths?
Yes, many of the people who've been told that there's something wrong with them, or they're too sensitive, they're too this or too that, are empaths. And by the way, you are not too anything. You are 100% who you are, and you want to maximize that. You want to maximize your sensitivities, and that's what the book is about, how to maximize it without absorbing so much stuff that you become exhausted.
Absolutely. I remember as a kid being told by my parents that I had an overactive imagination or that I was too sensitive. And I remember feeling horrible and feeling different from especially my other members of my family and friends and so on and stuff in school. And I always felt isolated because of the way I was treated. Did you feel that way also?
Oh, yeah. I felt like, just the only one experiencing this and so alone and so weird and didn't know where I belonged. And there's a quote I want to read to you from the book, which I love. It's, "If you feel as if you don't fit into this world, it's because you're here to create a better one."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's true.
For all those empaths out there.
It's beautiful and it's true. How many of us empaths are out there to build and rebuild a compassionate, loving world? I think that's so important for us.
Yes, exactly. And so the first step really is to identify if you're an empath.
And what are some of the common traits of an empath?
Oh, there's a quiz in the beginning of the book, but some common traits of an empath include I require alone time to refuel myself, and I don't refuel myself with people. With empaths, the signature of an empath is that they love to replenish themselves alone. And that's very different than extroverts. Do I get drained by noise, crowds, or excessive talking? Empaths have very strong sense of smell, so if they walk into an elevator with perfume in it, they can often feel suffocated, whereas other people will feel like, oh, what a beautiful smell. So it's a different perception. Do I often feel like I don't fit in? Do crowds drain me, and do I need alone time to revive myself? Do I prefer taking my own car to places so that I can leave early if I need to? Empaths need to escape. They can't stay somewhere for 5 hours and socialize. It's impossible.
I know that one all too well.
Yeah. Do I overeat to cope with stress? Empaths, there's a chapter in the book on empaths and addictions, and oftentimes empaths like to put on a lot of weight because the armor stops you from feeling other people's pain and negative energy.
I know that one too.
Yeah, that's one element to overeating. If you've tried diets and they failed, if you're an empath, then maybe you need some more techniques and strategies in addition to the diet that could help you deal with the energetic component of it.
Absolutely.
And this is a big one, too. Am I afraid of becoming suffocated by intimate relationships? That's a big one for me because, as you know, I've been single much of my life, or I've had, relationships for a couple of years, and the relationship I'm in now is coming on 4 years, and it's really stretching me as an empath because my little empath self inside just wants to be in my room alone. Doesn't want to deal with anything, in terms of another person in my space. However, I love this other person very much, so he's stretching me to be able to reach compromises, to authentically express my empath needs, to have him respect them and honor them. So it's been this point is a stickler for me because I was an only child and an empath. So I'm trained to be alone, trained to replenish myself alone.
What about environmental stimulus? For example, are empaths more sensitive to, let's say, fluorescent lighting, electromagnetic energy, that type of thing?
Yes, they sense magnetic energy, are sensitive to solar flares, changes in electromagnetic energy, computers, EM radiation from any kind of technical device. It can make them sick and tired. And so empaths have to really, take some steps to take care of themselves around that. And they don't do well around a lot of power lines. And I know that's kind of impractical if you live in a city, but it's true. And then also, I just want to say empaths are very sensitive and tuned into animals. There's a type of empath I talk about in the book called an animal empath, where they have a special communion with animals and can feel their needs and can communicate with them. And some of my empath patients are vegan because they feel the suffering of the animals that they eat meat. Yeah, so that's really sensitive.
What about noise levels?
Oh, empaths are very noise sensitive. They can't stand loud noises. They can't stand yelling. They can't stand talking too much or abrupt noises. They have increased startle responses. So little things will make my whole body, shake. Just if, I could walk on the street, and if the traffic light is making some weird beeping noise, it'll scare me because it just goes right up and down my system. Empaths don't have the same filters that other people have. People who are human beings who are not empaths have different defenses. They're more guarded. They're built in their neurological system with more defenses. I don't want those defenses personally because I love my empath self, and I've learned how to really work with it so I'm not drained and so I can flourish in my gifts. But still, it takes a lot of practice. It's a skill. How do I be who I am, which is maybe different from other people, and feel amazing about it.
Empaths? I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
And I was just going to say one other thing about empaths, the question in the quiz is, do I prefer one-to-one interactions in small groups to large gatherings? That's empaths typically like one-to-one or just a small, intimate group, not big parties or stadium football games. They can't really go to those. It's not pleasant for them because of all the people and noise.
I actually had to teach myself to do that, to be in large crowds. As a child, I much preferred one or two friends, and that was it, and not large crowds or large gatherings. And I actually had to, because of commitments professionally and personally, I had to train myself to tolerate large crowds and be in those types of situations.
Yeah.
And are there certain professions that empaths are normally not found in because of the amount of exposure and the energy and the emotion of, for example, EMT people, technicians who work with ambulances? I doubt there are too many empaths who haven't been trained in those types of professions.
Who work with ambulance?
Right, people who are EMT responders, first responders, medical technicians.
Oh, yes. That's often very hard for empaths because they take on all the suffering.
And police.
Yeah.
Police. I doubt there are too many police.
The same. I've worked with some patients who are police officers who are empaths, but I think it's rare to keep your heart open and be that sensitive and yet be so guarded and protective. So I think it's hard, those kind of emergency professions. However, as a physician, I worked in the emergency room for 3 years in my psychiatric training, and I shifted into a part of myself that was selfless, and that protected me, as I was just into helping the other person, and for some reason I don't absorb when I'm in a selfless state. When I'm in my personal state, I tend to absorb more, which is interesting to me.
Talk a little bit more about that. How do you get into that selfless state?
When I'm just there to serve others, when it's not about me. When I have a private practice where I treat a lot of empaths and sensitive people, and when I go and work with people, I am there 100% for them. I'm not focusing on myself, my issues, my this, my that. It's all about them. The patient is my universe, and in an emergency room, that's really exacerbated, because it's so intense and you have to be there in the moment. And so the self-forgetting that happens was protective for me.
That's a wonderful gift, and I think most natural healers know that when they walk into a situation where they have to work with someone else and tend to the needs of someone else, they have to leave their emotions, their feelings, whatever. If they're having a bad day, they have to leave that at the door and just be there, completely present for that person.
Right. And then when the ego isn't involved, because the ego is nowhere in there, it's just about pure action and pure service, then you don't absorb as much for some reason. It's interesting, isn't it?
It's fascinating. And what professions would you normally find empaths comfortable in?
Empaths make great artists, musicians. They are great at working at home. There's a chapter in the book on empaths and work, which I think is really practical for people in terms of what jobs are good for empaths and the best and worst jobs for empaths. And so, working at home, having a home office as opposed to being in a corporate setting, which have a lot of office politics that empaths can't handle, and all the driving that it takes getting to work, and traffic they can't handle because they're exhausted by the time they get to work. And so anything to do with the helping professions is wonderful. Clergy, hospice, psychiatry, psychology, massage therapy, acupuncture, the whole gamut of the healing professions are so important. But
veterinary services, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, veterinary services, anything that involves helping others. But there's another section in the book on how the healthcare professional can keep their center and be able to be giving without taking on the animal's pain, or the person's pain.
My guest tonight is Dr. Judith Orloff. She's the author of the new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. And Judith, what activities do you have coming up in May? Do you have some book signings coming up now in May?
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm going to be at the New York Open Center in October doing a workshop on this book, The Empath Survival Guide. And in May, I'll be in L.A., at Inside L.A., giving a workshop on May 10th. And then I'll be at Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, giving a weekend on this topic in July 28th.
And you can find out more about Judith and her book and all of the activities and all of her appearances at her website, drjudithorloff.com. And we'll be back with more of Judith Orloff and the Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People, after these words from the OMTimes Radio Network.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you in an interfaith relationship and thinking of getting married? For 18 years, Reverend Laurie Sue Brockway has been creating personalized, loving, and romantic ceremonies for couples of all faiths and cultural backgrounds. Reverend Laurie Sue's sensitivity to the needs of interfaith couples is reflected in the compassionate and inclusive way she addresses the concerns of parents and families. Reverend Laurie Sue is also the author of several best-selling books on interfaith weddings and wedding vows. Selected as one of the top interfaith officiants by New York Magazine, Reverend Laurie Sue serves couples in the New York metropolitan area and beyond. Find out more at her website, yourinterfaithwedding.com.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Hi, this is Bill Maher. I can find humor in almost anything, but one thing I never laugh about is cruelty to animals. If you don't get the joke either, write People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, 501 Front Street, Norfolk, Virginia, 23510.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening, Dr. Judith Orloff, author of the new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. Judith, just before the break, you were talking about how people who work with animals and veterinary situations have to have special training. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, all empaths who work in the healing professions need to have special training. Otherwise, they're going to absorb the suffering of the people they treat or the animals that they work with. Because empaths are emotional sponges, and I keep repeating that, but I think it's important for empaths to know that the way that they function in the world and communicate is through feeling and absorbing. All right, and the feeling part is fine, but learning how not to absorb what is none of your business, such as other people's suffering, is really important. And so what I work with all my empath patients is that the idea, the belief that you're not more compassionate if you take on somebody else's pain. And that often goes very deep in people in terms of what their spiritual upbringing was. As many people were taught to identify with the martyr archetype, where they felt in order to be compassionate, they needed to bloody themselves and go through torture to help others. And it's just not necessary. That's such an old idea. Exactly. And then you can say you're a compassionate person. But, from my standpoint, as a psychiatrist, as an empath, that prototype doesn't work at all. I would never be able to have, over 20 years of working with patients. I would be dead if I did that, given the amount of suffering I'm around constantly. You see, so you have to know as an empath that you can sit there and shine your light on someone and guide them without absorbing anything from them. No, to deal with any codependency issues you have on the empathic level is very important, because empaths are fixers, and that's something they have to deal with. They want to fix other people because your pain is my pain, that kind of thing. And they have to learn a different way of relating other than fixing, because, number one, you can't fix anybody else. It's just not possible. You might want to, but you can't. You can be a guide, but you can't fix them.
Very hard lesson for most of us to learn.
It is hard, but it's so necessary, because empaths have to get that. Otherwise, they're going to have their energy dissipated.
So how do we turn off the sponge effect? What tips or exercises do you recommend in your book and for patients to close the pores of the sponge so they're effective and compassionate without absorbing?
Right. Well, number one, keep breathing, because breathing circulates all kinds of stress and negative energy. The breath is sacred prana, so you want to keep breathing to breathe out the negative energy. If you let's say, start feeling, a pain in your body when you're talking to someone and you suspect it's somebody else's pain, breathe it out. Don't panic. Just breathe it out, and that will help the process of getting it out of your system. And then if you're, let's say, talking to someone you suspect you're picking up stuff from them, you could move 20 feet away just to test it out, because then you're outside the realm of their energy field, and most likely the symptom will dissipate at that point if you step away from what's disturbing you. And then also, limit physical contact with people, because hugs are a choice. If you exchange energy when you hug, when you touch, when you look at someone deep in the eyes, it's all an energy exchange, so be discriminating. And then also, I love the shower meditation, which is getting in a shower and just feeling the element of water washing all the negativity, all the stress, whatever has clung to you inside or out during the day, just washing it away. I am devoted to water. I just feel so strongly about the water element. It's helped me enormously over the years maintain my center and cleanse. And then also learning to visualize cutting a cord between you and other people who are not healthy. That's a really important thing. So if you feel like you're being too connected with someone's physical or emotional state, visualize a cord of light extending from your belly to theirs, and then lovingly set the intention to cut the cord to their discomfort. You're not severing the connection with the person entirely, only with the unpleasant energy that they carry. So visualize taking a pair of scissors and cutting the cord between you and the unwelcome energy in the person. And so this allows you to detach energetically from what you're picking up as unpleasant.
What about things like gemstones? Like I know a lot of people use black tourmaline as something as a protective device. Do you believe in that?
I do. I have 5 or 6 stones just in a formation right on my nightstand. I have obsidian and some shells, but the obsidian is very powerful for me, the black obsidian, to hold that, and it grounds me. And I think people have to experiment with gemstones and see how they feel in your body, because I think depending on your chemistry, different stones feel differently. So to just hold them, the way to tell if a stone is grounding for you, just hold one. I had a patient who was just going in for brain surgery, and she was very frightened about it. This is her third brain surgery. And I gave her an obsidian to hold, before she went in, and then her husband gave it to her right when she came out of the surgery, and it really, really helped her. She loved it.
Wonderful. One thing, just on a personal note, I find that when I'm counseling someone and they're going through intense grieving or grief, they may not manifest this during the listening period where I'm listening to them, but I start tearing up, and I almost feel like I'm doing it for them. Is that a bad thing to do?
No, I think you're doing it with them. I don't think you're doing it for them. That's not my sense of you.
I understand, but I don't see them crying, but I start feeling that sense. My eyes start watering. I don't see that in the other person, though.
Yeah, I know. It just depends. That happens to me sometimes with clients, and I just let it well up. I trust it. I know myself well enough to know I'm not doing it for them. It's just something in me is touched.
Right. So that's more of an empathy rather than empathic situation.
Yeah, and I'm not doing it for them because I have no desire to do that. I mean, really, I am so clear that you can't do it for them, and trying to do it for them is not helpful.
Right.
Like, I'm really clear about that, and that's what I try and teach other healthcare professionals, because once you get that, it's really a basic way of interacting with your patients. It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Why is it that empaths have such a hard time with self-esteem?
Well, I think one reason is that they were never taught that being an empath is a beautiful, wonderful, empowering thing. They were always taught to be ashamed of their sensitivities, and especially boys who are called sissies and, weak and not embraced by the other boys who are going to all these sports events and playing video games. Empathic boys don't like those kind of things. They don't like loud noises. They don't like big crowds. And so they're kind of put down. Girls less so, but still girls aren't empowered. Their teachers aren't empowering them for being sensitive. They're maybe not as shamed as boys. But, it's hard growing up being an empath in Western society because our values are so over-intellectualized. So that's why I feel so passionate about giving empaths a safe place to express themselves and be and learn, and that this book hopefully will help them do that. And also there's a section in the book on how to set up empath support groups in your area, and I'm a big believer in that people need to just do it themselves, or start with 3 or 4 empaths. And, I have a format in the book that people can use, and just start supporting one another and create a movement so that we're not so alone.
You also have an empath support group on Facebook, correct?
I do. I have an empath support community on Facebook with over 7,000 empaths, and everyone's invited to join. It's just a place for empaths to talk about the challenges and triumphs of their empath journey.
Why do empaths have a difficulty with boundaries?
Well, empaths merge with others because they don't have boundaries, because everything is oozing into everything else if they don't have the boundaries. So part of the toolkit of being an empath is learning how to set clear boundaries with people and be able to, know yourself from another person, to know the difference between you and another person, and learn to say no. No is a complete sentence. To say, no, I can't do that, or could you please lower your voice? Yelling is very painful for me, because empaths can't stand yelling. It just feels like toxic bullets being shot at you when somebody yells in a destructive way. It's just a particular emotion that empaths have a really hard time with. And to be able to state your needs, to say, I'm sorry I made plans tonight, but I'm too tired. I just want to stay home and take a bath. To be able to be brave enough to break a plan, even though you're disappointing someone, so that you can practice self-care. So all of those boundaries are so important. And to say, no, this isn't okay with me. No, you have to talk to me in a respectful tone of voice, otherwise I'm leaving. Those kind of things.
Do empaths have a harder time transmuting and processing stress?
Yes, they definitely do, because they absorb stress. They can absorb the collective stress of the world and not even know it. I have patients who are earth empaths, which type that I talk about in the book, where let's say there's an oil spill thousands of miles away, they can intuitively pick that up and feel it as pain in their body because their bodies are connected to the earth, and they can feel the pain of the earth in their own bodies. And it's not far-fetched. This is absolutely true, and it's a very natural phenomenon to me. It's not far out at all to me, but I'm used to it.
My guest tonight on Destination Unlimited is Dr. Judith Orloff, the author of the new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People, and we'll be back with more after these messages on the OMTimes radio network.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Every hiring manager knows that a company is only as good as the people it's made from. So where do you find the best people? That may surprise you.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
This is talent worth knowing about.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Hello! Join us, Lisa Berry and Michelle Carter, every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for the Mindset Makeover, What's Possible. Get ready to become present, clear, and unstuck, and start living fully, led by your heart. While you listen and feel this transformation through vibration of word, sound, and song, you'll open up to what's possible and experience your shift.
Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
You're not wired to have a response to this sound. But when we introduce a new stimulus, Save the Food, we're helping to stop food waste. Save the Food. For tips and recipes, visit savethefood.com. Brought to you by NRDC and the Ad Council.
And we're back on Destination Unlimited. My guest this evening, Dr. Judith Orloff. She's the author of the new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. Judith, how is it that empaths relate to people who have narcissistic personalities?
Well, empaths and narcissists tend to have a toxic attraction to one another. And there's a section in the book on combating energy vampires, and the narcissist is the number one energy vampire for empaths. And the reason that empaths are attracted to narcissists is that they could be charming and loving and sexy and funny and seemingly empathic in the beginning, and they get hooked in by that. And then, of course, narcissists don't have empathy. They have what's called an empathy deficient disorder, meaning they don't have empathy, full-blown narcissists, that they become cold and withholding and punishing if you don't do exactly what they want you to do. All right? And so then you're in love with them, or then you're in a relationship with them and you can't get out because you're so hooked in. And then the narcissists are so attracted to empaths because empaths are giving and loving and understanding, and they want to please and all that. And narcissists love that. They love to feed on that. So empaths, beware. Now, I always suggest if you're suspecting somebody is a narcissist to give them the narcissist quiz in the book and make sure that they're not, and then also provoke a conflict. That always brings out the worst in a narcissist, because they hate it when, you go against them and they, their bad part comes out. They're not, oh, honey, that's so wonderful you expressed your needs. They're not calling you for 2 weeks and you're wondering why.
Can you give us an example of a couple of the questions for the narcissist quiz?
Number one, is somebody concerned with just their own feelings and everything's all about them? When you express your needs, do they become cold, withholding, and punishing? Do they seem to like endless applause from the outside world, and yet when they come to their family, they treat them very poorly? Do narcissists are not accountable for their feelings? When you express a feeling, they blame you for it, whatever is wrong. And narcissists use a technique known as gaslighting, where they make everything about the issue being you, and they make you feel like you're crazy. There was an old movie called Gaslight, where they're trying to make a woman feel like they're crazy, and by creating all these crazy stories that she believed, and narcissists do that. And so if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you could end up having your self-esteem so low and feel like you're so crazy and so off your center. That's the danger.
Without touching on politics, because we don't do that on this show, I think we're all in a relationship with a narcissist right now, but let's let that go and move on to something else. So in your book, we had mentioned that you lists many types of empaths. You had talked about earth empaths and animal empaths. What are the other types of empaths?
They're plant empaths. Plant empaths have a natural attraction to plants and trees and flowers, and they can intuitively connect with the needs of the plants and trees and flowers and communicate with their spirits. And they're often, have a green thumb, and they can grow plants and just have a wonderful relationship with plants and replenish themselves, among nature, among the living things. And then there's also mediumship empaths. These people can communicate with people and animals and spirits on the other side, because empaths don't have the same filters that other people have. They don't have the same filters between this world and the next. And so it's just, for some empaths, it's just a natural talent. They just, as children, they've heard the deceased loved ones, and, as adults, they just have a very natural connection to the other side. But, also there are dream empaths. Dream empaths regularly have vivid dreams that they remember, an experience that usually starts in childhood. And you're attracted to the dream world if you're a dream empath, and you look forward to going to sleep every night so you can dream. And I'm one of such empaths, so I love dreaming, and the first thing I do every morning is to remember my dreams and write them down in my dream journal so I can know what to do. I mean, they're guiding me. I had a dream the other night about something called mythic prayer. I heard the words mythic prayer, and it just, I don't even know totally what it means, but I've been feeling into it, and it's so beautiful, the whole concept.
That sounds beautiful. A lot of people have a tendency to compare empaths to highly sensitive people. What's the difference between someone who's truly empathic and someone who is highly sensitive?
Well, sometimes there's an overlap, but highly sensitive people have mainly the sensory elements, meaning they're sensitive to loud noise, to bright lights, to scratchy clothes, to a lot of commotion, and they need a lot of alone time to refuel. But highly sensitive people are a little bit lower on the empathic spectrum than empaths. Empaths take it even farther. They might have all the sensory elements that I mentioned, but they absorb energy and emotions and physical symptoms from others into their own bodies. Highly sensitive people don't necessarily do that. And the empaths, I was talking about the plant empaths, the mediumship empaths, the earth empaths, that's way beyond highly sensitive. That has to do more with an intuitive, deeply, deeply empathic connection with the universe and nature, which isn't usually associated with highly sensitive. But you can be an empath and a highly sensitive person at the same time. So you can have all the sensory elements plus all these other things.
Now, in your book, you use the term emotional contagion. What is that, and how does it affect empaths?
Well, it's a very interesting phenomena that in part explains why someone is an empath. Emotional contagion is like when you're in an office and somebody comes in who's extremely anxious. That anxiety spreads across the workplace like a virus, so then everybody's anxious. But empaths can feel this kind of emotional contagion, even if it's not as extreme as intense anxiety. I mean, an empath might feel fear, an empath might feel trepidation, an empath might feel incredible joy, that's being spread, because there's positive contagion, which is all the positive, compassionate, loving emotions can spread like wildfire amongst people, and as can the more destructive or difficult emotions. And empaths are just hyper-attuned to emotional contagion.
And you also talk about emotional hangovers. What are they, and how can they be avoided?
Well, empaths often get emotional hangovers, and this is a lingering residue after you've been in let's say, a social situation where you feel like all the emotions of the people there are lingering in you. It's like a hangover. It feels terrible. It feels just like, you're carrying around a bunch of other people's stuff. And so, it's important to deal with that immediately.
What tips do you recommend for people to avoid those?
To avoid them is to be very centered when you're in a crowd. If you notice that you're absorbing, take a break, go in the bathroom, do the 3-minute heart meditation that I suggest in the book to ground and center yourself and clear and release the negative energy. When I feel energy clinging to me, I immediately excuse myself and do some breathing and meditation to get it out of my body. And the sooner you do that, the better. The problem is with empaths is that they overstay their welcome too long. So by the end of the night, they're just a depository of all this sludge from, the environment. So just be aware of it. Just be aware of it. If you notice the emotions starting to be absorbed in your own body, just take yourself aside. Be compassionate with yourself. Be gentle. Breathe. Maybe you could put your hand on your heart. Or let's say the symptom is lodged somewhere, like in your stomach. Put your hand over your stomach. And just gently breathe and picture the energy going out the back of your spine through the lumbar vertebrae, which is a wonderful exit point for any energy you picked up. And the lumbar vertebrae is in your lower back. Visualize it going out and just going back into the matrix of the universe where it belongs, not in your body.
So we've looked at all of these issues that empaths have to deal with and the wonderful ideas and suggestions and experiences that you've had to deal with that. What about the gift of being an empath? Share some of that.
Well, that's the whole point of all this, is for empaths to enjoy their beautiful, sensitive, loving, giving, intuitive nature. And empaths are extremely passionate, extremely deep. They can take it deep. And if you want to go deep, if you want to love, if you want to have deep connections with lovers, spouses, friends, nature, your being an empath can get you there. And just your ability to intuitively be open, because the empath's journey is the adventure of a lifetime. It really is. You keep opening and going deeper and deeper and attuning to the bigger picture on a much deeper level. And you're so attuned to beauty and poetry and the energy of life. And your compassion gives you the capacity to help others. And empaths are just so beautiful because they're not callous or shut off or cold-hearted. Their sensitivities allow them to be a caring, vulnerable, and aware being. And so I support all empaths in uniting and embracing your sensitivities and shining them brightly over the world, because the world needs new empaths more than ever now.
Absolutely. My wonderful friend, dear friend, Judith Orloff, her new book, The Empath Survival Guide, Life Strategies for Sensitive People. Judith, please tell our listeners one more time about your appearances that are coming up and where they can get the book and find out more about you.
Well, all my schedule is on my website, www.drjudithorloff.com, ORLOFF.com. And you could sign up for my free empath support newsletter on my website and see my book tour schedule. I'll be all around the country. And then I'll be at the New York Open Center in October giving an empath workshop. On May 5th, I'm going to be at Inside LA in Los Angeles, Santa Monica. And in July 28th, I'll be at Esalen Institute giving a weekend in most gorgeous Big Sur to go deep with your empathic abilities, plus a bunch of other events. Mystic Journeys in Venice on April 11th.
Judith, thank you so much for being with us tonight and sharing this wonderful wisdom. There are so many of us out there who really need this book and need your wisdom and advice to pursue the happiness, the joy of being an empath and get past the difficulties. Thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And thank you all for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I am Victor the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.